nowhere to go and had to spin, otherwise he would have really T-boned the Alpha, and it could have been someone hurt. It was quick thinking for him to get it backwards and into the fence.
Yes, Ron Wanler, Speedway driver, and there is Beninka Alpha, which is bad luck for it. It's running well, and now Fire.
There's a bit of a brew up there. Great shame. Usually pristine motor cars produced by Beninkas.
That's adding insult to injury. Rather than catching fire, that's all he needed to make his day, poor fella.
Well, they couldn't do it in a better place with all the firefighting equipment there at race control.
So let's have a look at the race situation prior to all those changes, with Brock, Grice, Johnson, Wigston, Moffat in 5th, Harvey in 6th, watch him, and Moffat, Alan Brown 7th, Murray Carter 8th, and car 19 in the attention of its pit crew, another young chap making good progress in touring car racing, Neil Cunningham. He's from Queensland, Steve Harrington's from Tasmania.
Although, amazingly enough, Neil told me this morning that he's just moved to Melbourne from Surfers Paradise, whereas I understood that everyone in Melbourne was moving to Surfers.
Colin Bond into the pits, or out again now, 32, and being followed out by the RX-7 of Jerry Burgess, which was earlier holding 3rd place in the 3-litre class behind the class leader, Colin Bond. So those two cars were 1st and 3rd in the 3-litre class.
Probably with Steve Masterson on board now.
And race leader is Brock. One hardly needs to state that in the Hang 10 400. This man heading perhaps to his 7th consecutive victory in any race. That's a fairly unparalleled feat.
Well, the man ahead of him has won a few, and that's Alan Moffat there in the Mazda, up to 5th place.
Not often in top motorsport anywhere in the world that somebody can win the one race 7 times. Certainly not 6 on the trot, as Brock has already done.
The pit stop of Alan Moffat is going to be interesting, because I would suggest that he probably won't have to change tyres. There's obviously no driver change. He'll probably only hit it with 2 churns of fuel.
Here's the cheek that we saw between the two last year, Moffat and Brock. And Moffat doing it again, and having to do it, being forced on by the sheer competitiveness of the man.
I'd say Alan Moffat's pit stop should be something like 25 seconds.
Well, he is 2 laps behind Peter Brock. 3 laps now, I presume. Grice and Wigston and Harvey are both 1 lap behind.
There's the difference in speed and power of the RX-7 rotary. 260 horsepower, but it's very peaky power, relatively peaky power compared to the V8s. And in fact, Moffat due in some 8 laps time, which will bring him up to about 75 laps completed, because he's 2 laps behind the race leader Moffat, who's completed 69. But as I say, relatively peaky power, only about a 1500 RPM usable rev band on the car, 7.5 to 9,000 revs, and a car very good in running at constant high speed, but not so good picking up out of slow corners such as Arco Corner, where he would be the only car in the race using 1st gear out of that corner.
Yes, he mentioned that he has to use 1st there.
V8s of the Falcons and Commodores just talk their way out of that very easily indeed. Peter Williamson in now for a check on 77, and the change of colour to the car doesn't seem to have done it any particular good at this stage.
Well, obviously a problem under the bonnet. I think they're changing a plug. Bad luck for Peter.
Let's hear from John Smales.
Peter Williamson has a top-end miss in his motor car. It's caused him so far to stop 3 times. For the first time, he lost 104 seconds. So a top-end miss is what's stopping Peter Williamson. The other Celica of Graham Bailey dropped an oil box seal, a gearbox seal rather, and they worked furiously to repair that. So the 2 Celicas, despite aggressive driving on the road, are having real problems in the engine department.
most unusual because Toyota in Formula 3 in Europe, the motors run very hard and constantly, as we see the Alan Brown car, who's been third and fourth in the early parts of the race, halfway up the back straight, stationary, and the driver hopeful of restarting it, and there's
in the ditch.
The Gary Scott Phil Brock at the bottom of the S's, and you can't get much further off the track than that.
Well, of course, Phil's done that before. He did it in a Charger quite a few years ago, so he knows the area quite well.
Flat front tyre.
He's done a tyre
and
just
wheel.
when he'd inherited the lead in the class.
Not to mention the front of the car that he's done too, so he's given it a nice old whack.
Well, there's quite a drop there off the track. It's been graded a little, but it's still a little way down there, and you don't come out of that unscathed.
And Leo driving a car round on a flat tyre like that doesn't do anything much good, and in fact it's fairly hard to steer.
It's a bit of a problem. The worry you've got, of course, is that with the wheel banging on the ground and the tyre flapping around, it's going to cause more damage. That it's hard to tell with that tyre coming off. I wonder if the wheel is actually, the suspension is bent.
Looks that way, doesn't it?
Camera angles, it makes it difficult, but it looks to have a lot of
pushed back a bit
negative camber.
It's got a lot of negative indeed.
The famous silver race tape is going to be used in vast quantities on that panel work. Let's hope for their sake that the suspension damage isn't too serious.
It's a very unfortunate debut for Phil Brock in that car.
3 years since he's had a regular drive.
Yes, it's a while.
In fact, has had a couple of nasty bingles. He's pointing to the front of the car, which is fairly unnecessary. And again, we'll go down to John Smales in the pits where everything is happening.
Gary Scott, I've got it on good authority from the commentators who can see these things that Philip's gone off.
That's very disappointing. We're running very well. I think he must have had some sort of problem. And as yet, we in the pits don't know what's happened, but we'll just have to wait and see.
It's difficult for a driver going out, though, fresh to get used to the track conditions. Could it have been driver error?
It could be. There's a lot of cars breaking down and there's oil all over the place, and when they come in, things cool down, and I just don't know. We'll have to speak to Philip. It's very, very unfortunate. I'm sure I'll speak for all the team. Will be very disappointed because we've worked our way to the first in the class, and we're looking very good, actually. The car is brilliant, and with 30 more horsepower, I don't think anyone will see which way we went.
He's just come into the pits. Gary Scott, I'll let you go.
Thank you.
Certainly has got negative camber there.
Yes, that's they'll have to put that away. That car will be completely unsafe. I'd say if they attempt to continue to race it like that, it'll be black flagged anyhow.
Well, let's have a look at it and see how it goes. Now, how it appears to point into corners, how it behaves under brakes, because that's where it could be affected too.
I can assure you it will behave very badly from personal experience.
Another of the cars in problems is they're everywhere. Jim Keogh there at car 22, sharing it with Andrew Newton, Melbourne solicitor, who made a pit stop early on in the race. He's parked off in the rough stuff as well. Quite a lot of interest in the 2-litre class, where all these incidents have been occurring. The Beninka Alpha, the Peter Williamson Celica, then this Gemini, which was up in the class lead. Let's have a look at it around the track, see how the car's working. Brock, you can see, being very cautious with the car, really trying to feel it out. And let's go again to John Smales.
There's the man in the pits, Andrew Newton, looking for Jim Keogh, and he's a man with nowhere to go, all dressed up and nowhere to go. Andrew Newton, I'm told by the commentators that your car's just gone off the track.
It should be. It's just gone
off the track.
Has it really? Yeah, well, we were waiting for him to come in. That's the first indication I've had.
Well, it looks like you don't get a drive today.
Well, that's disappointing, but that's the way it goes, I suppose.
Andrew, that's my...
Broken down there. And Jim Keogh, with helmet and gloves off, as you can see, trying to find out what the problem is and see if he can get it restarted. So he parked it rather than lost it.
Obviously not paid up with the RACV.
Vern Schuppen had an incident like this at Le Mans, where in the Porsche 936, as we watched Johnson scything his way along to the Porter at a power at least Dolomite, the car that last year came home in 8th place by Wade, that Dolomite. But Schuppen stopped out on the track at Le Mans, which is a very long track around, and had to get instructions from his crew back in the pits as to what to do to hobble the car back to the pits to get attention, because he wasn't allowed, nobody but he was allowed to work on the car out on that section of track. Fairly difficult with a very big rear deck on the Porsche 936. The oil flag, the red and yellow striped flag there being shown up the back straight. This Peter McLeod's peripherally ported Mazda number 40, which along with Barry Jones has been running for most of the year. The Moffat Peter Stuyvesant car just coming onto the track the first time this meeting. But these cars already showing the potential of the RX-7. Suitability to Australian touring car racing. McLeod, like Moffat, having to run in the outright class, being rated at 4.4 litres because of the peripheral porting. And there, at lap 75, you can see the outright placings. Quite fascinating. 3.5 litre BMW slotting up now to 4th. The John Harvey Vern Schuppen car recovering well and in the steady hands of John Harvey, now back in 4th place, and quite a threat, I would suggest, to a better placing before the end of the race. Be interesting to watch against Harrington. Moffat there would be delighted to be in 5th place on his initial outing in his new car, and Dick Johnson, considering his troubles, probably not too unhappy at being 6th.
We have 30 cars still on the road, Will.
But Johnson in 6th, as good probably as he's likely to be placed, whereas the BMW, and particularly the RX-7 of Moffat, with the potential of being better placed, although this bit of spoiler at the front of the car dropping down onto the track was visible from the rear of the car as we looked at it earlier on, and now can be seen on the right front as you're looking at it, the left front of the car.
He's probably clipped one of the ripple strips coming over the top of the hill. It's fairly easy to do, and that spoiler sits quite low on the car.
Might clip something else too. Car 52 offering something there. Bob Holden's Escort 2 litre.
About to say before all the pit stops started and things got so busy that people are probably wondering why Dick Johnson didn't pick up the shock absorber problem before the race. But of course, they wouldn't have done enough practice laps for the shocks to get hot enough.
That's right.
To show up their problems, because the car was going so well in practice that they did a minimal number of laps.
And they split up the laps anyway.
Yes, well, it's a smart thing to do. There's no point in wearing the car out on the Saturday.
As Peter McLeod in car 40 pulls in.
Great roar from the crowd here as on the track past the pits, the grandstand goes Peter Brock, and there you see John Harvey, the 2 Holden dealer team cars, 1st and 4th places.
This is a combination and a setup that the 2 drivers like. They get on very well together. Harvey was very disappointed not to have been in this race last year, to have been replaced in the car, albeit only for 1 race, by Alan Moffat. And he acknowledges the great driving flair of Peter Brock. Brock acknowledges the superb backup service that he gets from John Harvey.
He's going to get his back up in a minute, I think.
Yes, he might indeed. And it looked there as though they were going to go into team formation, but judge for yourself.
Yes, well, John Harvey saying, OK, well, you get by me where you can. Just because you're the boss doesn't mean to say I have to kiss your boots.
And Brock thinking, well, goodness me, I don't know what goes on in this team. Everything was well behaved until Moffat drove with us last year and he gave me hell. And now Harvey's doing the same. He's normally been so well behaved in the past, but Brock slots in underneath him in the Ripco corner. But will that be the end of the discussion?
Well, maybe they're going to tug each other up through the field, or at least tug John Harvey up a place maybe. He has Wigston ahead of him. One time they had two-way radio contact, certainly with their pits, these two cars, and at one time they organised it so they could actually talk to each other during a race. I don't think they have that facility right now, though.
John Harvey has competed with great distinction and success in probably more areas of motorsport, Australian motorsport, than anybody, I think, and that covers Colin Bond. About the only thing he hasn't run in is rallies. But as a teenager, was judged one of Australia's best on speedway and speed cars, then came into road racing, ran in minis, single-seaters, he's run sports cars, and very shortly will debut a historic BSA Gold Star and take up motorcycle racing. And I know how hard he'll go. He doesn't hang about. He's a great mate of Mick Hones, who runs a superbike for Rob Phillis, and John Harvey will be trying his hand at that. Looking here at
past and present Ford heroes
in the battle for the 1970 Gold Star, and going into the last race, Max, John or I could have won it. So he's been in everything. That's
Johnson, as we look at him now, with all the pit stops sorted out and the various problems, he is in 5th place. The official scoreboard says he's 2nd. Our scorer says he's 5th. Alan Moffat there in 43. Tucked in behind him, and we have him. We did have him at 5th. Let's have a look at his position now. Alan Moffat at number 43. 6th.
So Johnson moves up 1 place and Moffat down 1. Still quite some way to go. It's sort of centre period of the race, or coming towards that centre period. And there we have the John Player team ready for Alan Grice to come in.
Coming in now, Alan Grice running extremely well. He's 2nd outright. What a great run. His car down on power and up on weight on the opposition V8s. Well suited to this circuit. Will he drop his 2nd place to 3rd place Steve Harrington in car number 27? 4th place to car number 25. We'll go to John Smales in just a moment, but car 25, the John Harvey Holden Dealer Team car.
the key to this stop will be how many tyres they have to put on.
The well-oiled Alan Grice team in the pits. Grice sucking on a drink. Alan, how's the car going? Still sucking on a drink, which is very hard to talk to him while he's doing that, but he needs that nourishment because you can see the sweat all over his face. 25 seconds gone, 2 tyres going in. Alan, how's the car?
Car's pretty good, just this little bit of a wisp of smoke here in the cab. Probably coming from the gearbox, but hard to identify. I'll just have another drink.
Car almost ready to go, in fact. He's not leaving himself much time to have his drink. 3 churns of fuel in, 40 seconds gone. The tyres are right. I'm going to stand back because I don't think I'm going to get another chance to talk to him. He's gone with his dry brake flap open, so that causes a problem for Alan Grice. I'd suggest 49 seconds to stop. That's not bad, but he's gone with the flap from his dry brake system open. Is that a problem for him with the dry brake flap open? Okay, the pit crews say no, so we'll see what happens.
It's automatic closing.
It's the airflow. Airflow over the back of the car, quickly taking care of that. It's merely an appearance cover. The dry brake system itself doing all that's needed to seal the fuel filling, which is the advantage of the system. It's automatic, that when the churn's plugged in, the fuel goes in, and when it's removed, without spillage of a drop, it shuts off automatically. Quite expensive system, but well worth its while, although the crew's still, as you can see, garbed and talking about everything being all right and just a bit of smoke in the cabin, but there's a little bit too much smoke, I'd suggest, from the 635 BMW.
Well, there's a pipe hanging down under the car. It looks as if it may have been a breather, a blocked up breather perhaps from the gearbox. That is an oil smoke coming from the rear of the car, from somewhere, be it the engine or the transmission. It won't be going on the road too much. It's going up in smoke, so to speak.
worry, because you'd see that apart from what he's got in the cockpit, you'd see that he's losing it out the back too. If it's gearbox oil, well, the worry is, of course, that the oil will all be gone before the races.
As we look at Harvey, and then his team leader Brock going under Craig Bradkey, leaning on Craig Bradkey. And as he jumps past, just a little wave of acknowledgement, and comes now to the Philip Brock car, being driven by his brother. See brother and brother there together. And no time for pleasantries, as the car got a bit upset, a bit jumped around there, as Brock had to go in tight and onto the curbing to get under Philip, his younger brother. Perhaps one of the, as we look at the outright placings now, still this great run by Harrington, Harvey chasing him. Price back to fourth, fifth place Johnson, and Moffat now sixth. That's an interesting assortment of cars.
There's a sense of deja vu about this race each year, isn't there?
I don't think so, actually. That's quite an interesting array of placings there, and of varied cars and different people. As we look at the Mitsubishi Colt number 66, it's been having fairly consistent trouble. Ian Burrell and Rob Shute. And has been stopped out in the circuit a few times.
With Garth Wigston behind the wheel of the Harrington car now, too, you're probably looking at the names of 6 of the very best long-distance motor racing drivers in this country. It only goes to show what a good effort it was for young Harrington to get it up into that company.
Indeed, he really has been doing a great job. But I was saying that Peter Brock not only is a fabulous record of road race performances, but I think a performance that was not as well accredited as it deserved was his run in the Repco trial. As a team effort, it was brilliant. To debut 3 cars for an event, and to see them run absolutely, virtually perfectly, and come home 1, 2, 3 in an event of that toughness and that length, as we see the Beninca Alpha mobile again. But the way that Peter Brock ran the event was a great credit to him.
Yes, it was. I think a lot of people don't realise that rallying is a different form of motoring and driving. It requires different skills and abilities, and it just shows the versatility of the man. Is probably only Colin Bond would be probably the only other driver of that type of with that type of ability to be able to do both jobs so well.
He's a man who's specialised, whilst Brock has run not only in rallies and rally cross, where he was really something to watch, but also single-seaters fairly briefly in a Barana Formula 2. But Johnson, on the other hand, has specialised in touring cars throughout his career. And Leo, you remember him in his early days in an XU1, where he was sometimes exciting to watch.
Yes, he used to get a bit sideways more often in the early days in the XU1. And, I had quite a few good runs with him when I used to run Crystal in the Chargers. And, he was the top Queensland touring car driver for quite a long time.
The Alan Moffat crew.
Well, the interesting thing now is that Garth Wigston is now only 11 seconds ahead of John Harvey. They're both on the same lap, so obviously Harvey has a very good chance now of moving up into second place, albeit 2 laps behind team leader Peter Brock. Brock on 84 laps, the others on 82.
Moffat really has no potential to go better than 6th, because most of the people in front of him have made their stops. In fact, they all have. And although his stop now is going to be a quick one, or should be a quick one, it's obviously going to pull him back. So the race potential of the car, in fact, is in about the tail end of the top 6. And let's have a look at the stop, and when John Smales is ready, he'll tell us about it.
A lot of oil on the back of the car.
Professional Moffat team goes into action. The professional Moffat team in action. 12 seconds down at the moment. So professional are they, in fact, that to stop flame back from the exhaust pipe, they put a great hose on it to stop the flames, which have just fallen off, going up onto the the fueling system of the motor car, and that has just fallen off. Moffat takes 2 tyres, 32 seconds gone. He's already waved us away. Moffat will not talk. The 3rd churn of fuel goes in, which is a little bit surprising for him. Didn't take too much at all. At 38 seconds, Alan Moffat, the fastest pit stop of anyone in the race to date, and he took 2 and a bit churns of fuel. That's some 80 litres of fuel. So he now knows that the Mazda RX-7, which he didn't know before he got involved in this race, will do about a litre a lap around Sandown Park.
Chris Hyer's Golf pulls off to the left on the back straight as Alan Moffat rejoins.
In fact, if that were the true consumption of the car, it would be very modest, because 3 kilometres a lap, that would be some 15 kilometres or 10 odd miles per gallon. And obviously they haven't filled the car to capacity, because Murray Carter, running an opposition V8, they do about 5 miles per gallon, but the Mazda gets a good deal closer to the V8s than that stop would indicate. But Murray Carter running well, now up to 6th place, past the higher Volkswagen number 53, stopped there on the right-hand side. And here are the placings. Changing all the time. Keep your eyes on Harvey chasing Wigston. Grice nicely settled in 4th. Johnson. Interesting to see whether he can do anything about Grice. And then Carter.
I don't think Grice will be able to do anything about Harvey. So it's looking a little static at the moment.
There behind Carter is Wigston, and I wonder whether we can possibly get a sight of Harvey. There, the yellow car, Garth Wigston. His 2nd place under threat. Down to John Smails in the pits again.
John Cooney, Alan Moffat's pit manager. Not a bad stop from him, the best in the race. The professionals are working well, eh?
Well, a bit of practice yesterday helped. We spent a bit of time trying to practice pit stops.
Moffat was pointing very, very savagely towards the right rear-hand side of the motor car.
Just changing the right rear tyre as a precaution.
You weren't expecting to do that?
Oh, we thought we might, but it was just a precaution.
The driver happy?
Yes, yeah, well, we think anyway.
Thank you, John. Right.
Grice, the BMW, running well, and be quite happy to be in the top 6. More happy about that than about the blue smoke from the car. Very free revving engine, running up to the 7,000 odd revs. 6-cylinder only, and therefore here running in the 3 to 6 litre class against the V8s, but at Bathurst running in the 6-cylinder class, where they've brought in an innovation and will not be in the same class as the V8s.
If you watch closely if you're able to see under the left side of the car, next time the car's on camera, there's a breather pipe dangling. I would suspect it's the gearbox breather pipe, and that could be the source of his oil. It can be seen, it's just a piece of plastic hose. There's no danger of it causing damage in itself, and I'd suspect that's the problem.
Wigston is getting away from Harvey, unfortunately. The gap is now up to 15 seconds. So Harvey's bid for 2nd place is not looking so good. Chris Hayer gets moving again in the Golf, having had a breather there at the Mobile Kink for a couple of laps, as Peter Brock streaks up the back straight. Now back to John Smails again in the pits.
Well, usually it's the ladies who sit in the pits, clicking the watches, doing the lap times, being worried about their men on the track. Fred Gibson is in the pits. Christine Gibson is in the car. Fred, do you worry about it?
Oh, not really, John. I think the car's pretty safe. She knows what she's doing, and she'll get the job done okay.
It's the first time she's driven a big Falcon, is it not?
Yeah, it's the first time she's driven for a fair while now. She's done a lot of practice at Oran Park. This is her first race for a fairly good long time.
You're both going to be racing in the James Hardy 1000 together, or in separate motor cars as competitors.
That's right. That's what I'm a bit afraid about.
Yeah. Christine is a very confident driver, but there's a lot of traffic out there, Fred, for someone who's not driven. surely there must be some concern.
Oh, there is a bit, John, but she's taking her time. She's not rushing things. She's only doing 19s, which is a good, consistent time. And all we're down here for is to get them practice in the car, Joe and Christine, and sort of see if we finish the race for change.
Where's she lying, by the way?
Oh, I think she'll be up in the first 10 anyway, which is quite good for the speed we're going, really.
Fred Gibson, best of luck. I hope you enjoy the nerves in the pits.
Thanks very much, John.
Very talented driver. Chris Gibson got a lot of time for her. Housewife and mother, but very clean driver, very pleasant and jolly sort of personality. And first time she ever ran in a big car, she drove with complete distinction at Sandown Park in their 300-kilometre enduro. She's run mostly small cars in her career. Hasn't done a lot of driving, as Fred was saying, in recent years. And is easy on the car, safe, but pretty quick. Onto the main straight. Still the traffic, still the melee. Murray Carter. And isn't he doing well? And in behind him, Steve Harrington. And there's something doing not so well. The Daily Hopwood Capri. And boy, that's intuitive camera coverage to stick with that car in an enormous amount of trouble.
That was Brock.
How close was it to a hit? Quite incredible.
Well, how would you feel if you'd taken the leader out like that?
And Terry Daly.
Was it Brock or Haas?
I think that was Peter Brock.
Deciding that...
very hard to see in the smoke.
That's as good a spot as any to leave the car. And let's have a look at the replay. And in fact, it is the race leader.
Yes.
So have a look at this for race history almost being rewritten. That consecutive 6-win run being made into a 7th, nearly disappearing. Brock knowing at this stage that he's going to come spearing back, or feeling there's a possibility. And look, one decision, go that way. And then Daly says, no, changed my mind. Go the other. And Brock says, when's he going to leave me alone?
And he only just made it.
And wasn't it brilliant driving, too?
Absolutely.
He didn't lock up. He didn't freeze.
A classic indication of a driver error there. There were two errors. The error when the car lost control, and you notice that he did not put the brakes on. That's why the car was bouncing around like a ping pong ball. Had he put the brakes on hard, he would have stayed on the right-hand side of the road. He was actually trying to drive out of it when the cause was so lost. It wasn't funny.
A bit like the Titanic with the water lapping on the deck.
When you get out into those situations, you put the brakes on hard and close your eyes.
Peter Brock in classic form, now cooling his hands up the back straight, and I reckon there'd be a few other bits of him that'd be feeling a bit taut after that little exercise, because you were saying earlier, Leo, that is it most cruel to go out on the first lap or the last? Certainly the cruelest thing to go out on is an accident with no fault of your own.
In the lead.
In the lead. But we've seen Johnson nearly bring him undone. We've seen Terry Daly nearly bring him undone. I think if Peter Brock comes home and wins this 7th Hang 10 400 on the trot, he will more than ever have earned that victory. 24 laps to go.
And down here in the pits, we can tell you how close it was. Those cars became very large as the Terry Daly car especially came out of control towards us. One man who was almost on the scene, in fact, at the fence, was Bob Forbes, who's helping out Charlie O'Brien today. Bob, what about Rocky's driving?
Well, John, all I can say is that's why the man wins motor races. He came round there, the yellow flag had been waving, he took the necessary precautionary step of slowing down, he analysed the situation, and as soon as that car had stopped, he picked the gap and went through.
Which is more than you can say for what we did in the pits.
This is quite right. And, you know, not taking anything away from Dick, it just seems that Peter has the concentration in these sort of events just to be able to drive through the traffic and keep out of trouble.
Bob, while we've got you, Charlie O'Brien was in second position. What's happened to him?
He stopped round in front of the grandstand, John, and we haven't had a report on what the trouble is.
Well, that's a shame. You're looking forward to a drive.
That's right.
Bob Forbes, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bob's done some great work co-driving often for Kevin Bartlett, and very much the amateur racer, a very successful businessman with a very large large business, doesn't employ a lot of people, but makes a lot of money. Runs some very nice road cars, and just has a punt from time to time, and really drives very smoothly and well, Bob Forbes. But here's a man, arch professional. Motor racing's his total career and job, although he's got other business interests now too. He hasn't worked at a separate job for quite a number of years. That's the race situation over which he has command. Weakston, Harvey, Grice. Mentioned before that Johnson is being shown as being in second place by the official motorcraft scoreboard, and with Steve Harrington in third in 27.
I noticed Brock going up the back straight, obviously trying to get some cooling air in, putting his hand out of the window, directing the air onto his face. Obviously he's really feeling the effects of the race, even though it's not a very hot day today.
Well, he told us earlier down on the start line there of just how much physical and mental strain is involved in running this race. And the Capri in the pits, the Terry Daly car that very nearly brought him undone. And as usual at this stage, when something starts to go wrong, it becomes a succession of problems, and it sort of builds on and on until it becomes a catastrophe, Leo, doesn't it? Cars start looking tatty, everything's leaking, the drivers have had it.
Yes, it's not much fun, and as you say, it seems to compound itself. The things won't fix themselves.
At about this stage, about half the crew are wondering why they're here, aren't they?
They were probably wondering that last night, because most of them would have been working through most of the night, just having a final look at the cars. I often used to wonder when I was motor racing, you'd have a bad day, you'd tend to go home and wonder why you did it. But even more so, you'd wonder why the boys had been toiling for weeks and weeks, only to be disappointed.
Well, here's a man that puts so much into it, not just in the driving, which is the area where most people are concerned, but that car represents Dick Johnson's own thoughts on sorting, designing, building, and the power that he gets from the engines. He's involved in all of that. And keeping his pecker up, Leo, really, because with the car not behaving well, and with two running on to two loss of control situations on the track, he still is hard into it, running in a very respectable placing, and obviously still concentrating.
Well, there's still a fair way to go, and stranger things have happened in motor racing. Races have been won from fifth position on more than one occasion.
John Bundy RX3 just in front of Johnson, the Bond Capri just behind. Bright sunshine, a very large crowd.
It's interesting that Murray Carter is in front of Alan Moffat, and I would think on their practice times that Alan won't be able to catch him.
Carter was a 16.3, Moffat was a 16.6, so really only a whisker. In fact, one imagines that with Moffat's perhaps greater aggression at this stage of the race, that he just might produce 0.3 or more of a second of determination.
Could well be, but then when he catches the Ford, he's got the problem of getting round it, because those Fords are quite wide, and they've got the power in the nice places, namely up and down the straight, where it's relatively simple to go quickly.
That we were looking forward to seeing here today, but which unfortunately didn't appear, was the turbo Datsun Bluebird, to be driven by George Fury, and at Bathurst will be shared by Fred Gibson, the lead car, and two Japanese drivers in the second car. The problem is that a lot of development is being done here, but the two turbo engines being done in Japan and sent out, and they haven't arrived. And, a bit of a shame, because
well, certainly
as Bob Holden goes through in 52,
certainly a shame for the Datsun people, and because they're going to go to Bathurst with rather an unknown quantity.
It's a very serious factory effort, and one which will be interesting to watch in coming meetings. Shane Cowan and Brian Wheeler there in the RX3 keeping a close tail on Bob Holden in 52. That RX3 well out of it in practice times. Coming into 34th starting grid position.
The second Bob Holden car, the 1.6 litre Escort, is being driven by the TAA driver to Europe winner, Philip Ravel, and another very good young Formula 4 driver, Ron Barnacle.
Yes, indeed.
Their first venture into taxi cab driving.
No,
Well, that's
they've
a
had
car
a
with
few
a-
runs in the car.
That's just got a Ford Crossflow engine, Formula Ford engine in it, actually, that car.
Yes. Quite standard, mate.
Pretty close to standard. Bob Holden's a pretty good guy that way in helping out and getting people behind the wheel.
Well, Philip has nothing but praise from the way Bob's looked after him during the year. He's been doing the engines for him. And you probably recall that Stephen Brooks won the championship last year in that self-same car,
yes,
with the assistance again of Bob Holden.
Yes.
Because Bob's of about my vintage. He's been around for a long, long time, and there's nothing much about motor cars, and particularly Fords, that he doesn't know.
Indeed. Talking of Ford drivers, a man abandoning the camp, changing over to Japanese Mazda, Alan Moffat. Brief drives in Holden products, once a Bob Morris A9X, once Marlboro Holden dealer team Commodore. But other than that, and a Chevrolet Monza, has been in Fords almost throughout his career. 1964 came here as a young lad with a strong Canadian accent in a Lotus Cortina, and pounded that around the circuit pretty hard. And the crowd at Sandown today, we've shown you a number of shots showing just how many people are here. Have a look at them there around the S's. Have a look at them in the grandstand. You've seen them earlier. Peter Williamson goes by. 52,300, only a few thousand less than to the Fangio meeting. And it's not hard to believe, because there was an enormous queue of cars this morning, not much after 9 o'clock, coming into the circuit. The enormous grandstand is packed, you can see there, even at this late stage of this race and the meeting. And they had bigger pre-race ticket sales and bookings and inquiries, not only from locally but from interstate, than they had even for the Fangio meeting. And I'd say if this morning had been fine and sunny instead of very overcast and drizzly rain, it would have bowled over the crowd. And in fact, that could be a bigger crowd than they might get to the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst, where over the last few years the crowds have tended to be falling.
Yes, well, let's hope the trend is going the other way and that people are encouraged to go and see it in person.
Indeed.
Because their television coverage is brilliant, but to be at the venue and hear the sounds and the sights and the noises and the beautiful exhaust notes, there's no real substitute for that.
And one of them well worth listening to is 44, the Alan Grice BMW. We've shown you a few of the cars there briefly. They're the ones that we're holding the major placings. Weekston would be delighted, not running regularly this year. John Harvey hasn't had a lot of outings either. Grice probably would like to see the car a little further forward. The irrepressible Murray Carter in 6th. And here's Johnson. Look at him. In behind and chasing the BMW. Peter Brock in the race lead, though, 2 laps in front. And Brock, has 18 to go, 17 and a half. He's completed 81. Alan Grice. Peter Williamson. The 3-litre class, Jerry Burgess, RX7, Dick Johnson. These 2 corners, that Repco and the next one Arco, claiming him earlier in the race due to the problem with rear shock absorbers. A lot of people don't realise, even in road cars, the enormous amount of heat that gets into shock absorbers and the enormous amount of fade that you can get, and how materially this can affect the car's behaviour, and not just in going over bumps, but handling through corners, body roll, and behaviour under brakes.
Particularly under brakes, very much so. Yes, I think people that travel quickly in the country and probably wonder why their car sometimes starts to feel a bit strange and wonder whether they've chosen the wrong kind of brand of tyres, would possibly find that if they got under the car and put their hand on the shock absorbers, they'd lose some skin.
Yes, yes, it's very hard to get the heat out of them, and in fact it was an important part of the Holden Commodore design, and integral even to the way the race cars perform. But when they brought them here, a very successful car in Europe as an Opel, when it was brought here and ran in outback testing, the shock absorbers got so hot that they locked solid, the front struts, and they had to in fact make them liquid cooled to, under the rough road conditions in Australia, to get enough heat out of them to make them viable. It was an early development problem with the Commodore. Not necessary at all in European temperatures and road conditions, but absolutely critical here.
Probably over there they'd need to put heaters on them.
As up the back straight strides Dick Johnson, 5.7 litres, down the bottom 3 litres, V6 Capri, Colin Bond going so well. Another master driver, hill climb driver, rally driver, and very successful race driver in single-seaters too. The race leader has, as you can see, 16 laps to go. That's 48 kilometres. If he completes that in the present position, he will have won this race on the trot since 1975, 7 times in succession, and adding 1973 to it 8 times overall.
And according to our lap chart here, the 3-litre class is being led, of course, by Colin Bond's Capri, and with the Burgess RX-7 and the Bundy RX-7 in 2nd and 3rd places. The peripheral ported cars, of course, are in the next class up.
BMW.
And Dick Johnson has 12 seconds to try and gain on Alan Grice with 16 laps to go, so theoretically he can do it.
Here's
to move up another place.
Not very far behind John Harvey.
And despite his earlier dramas, Peter Williamson is definitely leading the 2-litre class with the Toyota Celica.
Chris Gibson, formerly Chris Cole, round the back there, then Moffat. And John Harvey there with some degree of pressure on him. Alan Grice, you can see, not so very far behind.
Two seconds.
Steve Harrington, Garth Wigston car. What a good run. Young boy took the first stint. A driver declaring his retirement last year and who is having his first outing this year, to my knowledge, Garth Wigston, and slotting it on our lap chart at the moment into 2nd place. The Motorcraft scoreboard says he's 3rd, but either of those positions is a great credit to him indeed.
I saw Phil Brock is still going, by the way, in the Gemini. There he is, Phil Brock in the Gemini. A little bit battered around the front still, but going well.
Fascinating part of the circuit here as Alan Grice comes spearing off the top. John Harvey not far in front of him. Chris Gibson sandwiched between them temporarily. Grice going out for a long way around and didn't pull it off and probably wasted a little bit of time there.
That was the last thing he needed because it's going to affect his run onto the straight.
And he's got the information from Frank Gardner and the boys in the pits. Got radio contact as well as the usual pit signalling equipment. And he's out after John Harvey. And he tails him by 2.35 seconds. You can see the gap there. Very little in it. And let's hear about the situation from John Smales in the pit area.
I've got Frank Gardner with me. He's the pit manager for the Alan Grice team, and the gap's only 3 seconds to 3rd place, Frank.
Down to 3 seconds with about 20 laps to run, so...
How is Grice handling it? Is he catching him?
he's been pulling him in for the last 15 laps at about a second a lap, so we're looking good at this point in time.
Well, that's a big feather in your cap to get up there into third place if he can do it. But, of course, John Harvey is not an easy man to pass.
John will have a very wide car, I would think, in about the next 4 laps.
You happy with the car, Frank?
Cars ran well all day, yes, we're very happy with it. We're all pretty new with it with long-distance racing, but it's certainly come into line nicely, and if it finishes today, we'll be more than pleased.
The smoke that Grice was complaining about in the cockpit, is it getting worse or better?
No, it's gone away. It's cured itself, so it's obviously run out of oil or we're cured.
Frank Gardner, thank you.
Well, it doesn't look as if it's cured to us from our picture. As you saw there, a little bit of smoke coming still from the back of the BMW 635 CSI.
And did you notice that breather pipe trailing under the middle of the car?
A 16.66 second lap for John Harvey, being hounded and chased and reined in by Alan Grice. Tends to pick its inside rear wheel up on occasions and spin it a bit. Independent rear suspension on the car, but the geometry of it is such that it can do that even as a road car. Absolutely magnificent free spinning engines. They seem to want to rev forever. And I reckon if they had 4.5 or 5 litres, they would be absolutely delighted. But the basic motor that's in Alan Grice's car, the 635 with 12 laps to go, 36 kilometres, the basic motor in turbocharged form can push out 700, 800 horsepower in the CSL coupes that they run in Europe, and spin its wheels in any gear up to 5th. Something that Ronnie Peterson, among others, revelled in the past, having all that sort of power on tap.
That's what I need. I need a car like that.
To do the shopping.
Yes, I really do.
Yes, well, I think they have a fair bit of boot space. This tussle here, you know, could well be decided by luck of the draw in the traffic jams.
I think Grice, frankly, has got too much on him for that to be critical. Unless, of course, he gets brought entirely undone.
Well, you know, unless Harves is in a bit of bother and is prepared to let him go, Grice is in trouble.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
Yes, Grice is out of it.
Well, that makes the argument academic.
Yep. Well, what bad luck. And fairly certainly it'll be a pit stop, and Alan Grice's perhaps prophetic remark about either the problem has cured itself or he's run out of oil might be the answer to this slow lap by Alan Grice.
Well, can we see any lights glowing in the cockpit?
Well, Frank, of course, was being very tongue-in-cheek when he said perhaps it's cured itself, because motor cars don't cure themselves, unfortunately.
No. Dick Johnson comes by. Well, dear oh me, nobody could say the race has ever been static for very long. There'll be a fair few drivers and crews around who'd wish that it had been more static.
I found it one of the more entertaining races of recent years, actually.
Yes, indeed. It's been a fascinating
enjoyable
race, and is still a good race,
yes.
and still a very interesting race. As Grice comes down into the pits, we'll leave it to John Smales.
No, not into the pits.
No.
He's gone past the pit road. I think he's going to park it permanently.
No, a signal to them that he's coming the next lap. Or is it?
Well, what's the point of all that? That all seems a very pointless operation, to be driving around the track, wasting time. If there's anything at all they can do to fix that car.
Practice. But let's hear from John Smales down there with Frank Gardner.
Well, I'm not with Frank Gardner. It would appear that Alan Grice was trying to tell them that he's coming to the pit on the next lap. ABC Sports stopped, though, or could have saved him that trouble. He doesn't have radio contact with Gardner. I told Gardner when I heard you on main commentary, Will, and the JPS team was ready for him on that lap, but he's now lost a lap while he goes around again, waiting for them to get ready. So if he'd believed in the television, he could have been in the pits and fixed already.
And may in fact be compounding the problem, of course, by driving at that extra 3 kilometres of another lap. The rear lights have been glowing as if he's had his lights on, but the headlights aren't on. Obviously he hasn't got his feet on the brakes there, so what's going on at that end of the car I haven't been able to sort out for a few laps either.
I'm rather mystified by it, because I almost thought half a lap back that it might have been a handling problem, because the car seemed to be bouncing around a bit, but it could be only because it's going so slow. With a very firm suspension,
yes,
the car's bouncing a little bit on the bumps in the circuit.
Well, an extra 3 kilometres he needn't have done had he not known that we were never live.
And he's not in again. So,
Very
the most
strange.
curious problem, well, the other solution, of course, is that it's an incurable problem, which could be stuck in gear or something,
and he's going to
and the
nurse
only
it around.
answer is just to try and keep it out there, which is probably, in fact, the truth of the situation. He probably knows it's a terminal disease. The race leader has 10 laps to go, and that's worth about 13 or 14 minutes. So that's the time that Alan Grice has to wrestle with the agony and worry as to whether he can keep the car mobile for that long. Murray Carter just going by him, the man that he thought he had lined up, John Harvey, in 25.
I wonder if Frank Gardner has any idea at all what exactly is wrong with the car.
They were talking earlier of gearbox, so I'd say that could...
Yes, and I think your theory of it possibly being jammed in a gear will well be the problem.
This man's jammed into a rhythm, and as he said, and his fans, they love him. As he said, each year for the last few years, surely the luck can't stay with me. But by gee, hasn't the luck stayed with him? The way that he got around the spinning Terry Daly Capri, the way that he was able to knock off speed and get around Johnson and inherit the lead.
And
but
doesn't he also make a lot of his own
He
luck?
makes a lot. I was going to say that a lot of it was built-in sensing and anticipation. And his young brother, though, Philip, not such a happy day and has never really been anywhere near the same class as his brother, has he?
No, he was quite successful in series production a few years ago, but he's never raced it often, of course, or as seriously as Peter.
Leo, just a little prod on the brakes there from Peter Brock, rather like drivers used to do to keep the pedal pressure up. Of course, it's not necessary these days.
Oh, well, can be here. Brake wear at Sandown is exceptionally high, easily as high as at Bathurst, if not more, mainly because the brakes get hot and they have less time to recover. This part of the circuit that we're looking at now is a very hard braking area there, of course, and with just a few seconds respite, the brakes go on again. The brake temperatures there would be something like 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, heat is the enemy of brake pads, and the wear factor, probably just in those few seconds, the brakes get more worn than on the rest of the circuit put together.
With the causeway coming up, it's a nice bit of confidence too, just to feel there's a bit of pedal there.
Johnson, 17. 2 spins, crook rear shock absorbers, but still running hard and fairly fast, and in 4th place. And considering his problems, 4th place, nothing to be ashamed of either. Didn't run in the race last year, Dick Johnson, nor did Kevin Bartlett in the Camaro, as Bartlett's elected to do this year.
Just listening to the BMW going down the straight, and I suspect that it is box trouble. It sounded as though it was just running slowly in a lower gear. Maybe from where he got into trouble, it would probably be 3rd gear.
Peter Brock has completed 113 laps, is on his 114th in a 119 lap race.
Well, we have a pretty interesting situation here with regard to the overall placings. Well, the start line judges, who are in fact the judges of fact, will be pulling the cars in at the end of the race if it finishes as it is now, with Peter Brock first, John Harvey second, Murray Carter third, Stephen Harrington fourth, and Dick Johnson fifth. But there are a lot of things to be sorted out with the timekeepers, and there's been an awful lot of changes of pit stops, of cars stopping and then starting again. It's a very difficult job.
Well, not only does it not agree with our lap chart, which in the last 4 years has been right, but it also doesn't agree with the Motorcraft scoreboard being shown at the circuit, which shows Brock from Johnson from Harrington.
And which is hardly ever right.
And let's hear from John Smales in the pit area.
The confusion's about as rife down here as well. Depends on who you talk to up and down pit row as to who's coming where. But the general consensus of opinion certainly says Brock, Harrington, Harvey in that order. Meantime, the problem with Alan Grice is transmission problems back in the drive shaft somewhere. Changes gear all right, but it won't take any power at all. So Alan Grice is now simply cruising around to get the checkered flag.
Well, we know where this chap is anyway. Peter Brock, heading for his 7th win in this classic event. Coming up on Peter McLeod's RX-7. About to lap him as they approach the causeway. There he goes, smoothly, no fuss, no danger.
Remind you again of October 17 and 18, and I think the next ABC Motorsport coverage, the Castrol 6-hour race for production bikes at Amaroo Park in Sydney. As the crowd now, with 4 laps to go, are getting very, very jubilant. We'll be showing practice, some of practice day, and the bulk of the activity on race day there. Laps 115 completed, 117 seconds in front. But on Saturday, let's remind you again of that film, Gentlemen, Lift Your Skirts, all about the new technology in Grand Prix racing of downforce and aerodynamics, but some marvellous pre-war footage, a documentary from England, marvellous pre-war footage, some marvellous stuff from Keith Duckworth, the designer of the Ford Cosworth 3-litre Grand Prix engine, telling that when a piston is being stopped at the top of its stroke in a Cosworth Formula 1 engine, it's trying to put a 7-ton force on the crankshaft, and talking about the forces that go on in an engine at racing speed. So watch that on that Saturday, October 17.
Well, Brock is looking a little tired, but still time to wave to the crowd as he goes round. His elbow on the side of the car. The crowd is really beginning to rise to him. A familiar situation for him here at Sandown with just 2 laps to go.
No, we've changed it, it's 3.
I think the crowd were misled by the scoreboard,
yes,
which indicates that that was going to be the final lap.
And we'll have a change of mind too and say that he's getting the last lap board at the end of this lap, so he's 1.5 to go. And really, what a fine effort it's been. He is a great driver, there's no question of it. And what a thrill it would be to see Peter in single-seater race cars, as we saw him a few years ago in a Formula 2 Barana. Because, Leo, I think you'd agree, his smoothness and the way that he gets the car down, the power on, the way he brakes, the way he gets it through corners would be admirably suited to a quicker car, single-seater.
We did enjoy the brief time that he spent in the Barana back in '73, but I think his commitments to General Motors and the amount of workload that he'd accepted in driving for the dealer team just prevented him from concentrating on single-seater racing. I imagine it probably still would.
Well,
We saw him bouncing off the curbs down at Causeway there. He's really not necessary to be doing that at this particular point in the race. Whether it was just a very minor lapse of concentration or what, it's hard to say, but he only has to go through that section once more to reach the flag.
Well, in fact, the last lap sign, I think, is about to be shown to him at the end of this lap. The Motorcraft scoreboard has retired from the game because it's advertised 1 lap to go and has reduced that by 1 and got to 0, and everything's still continuing. And as I say, I think the last lap board is being prepared for Peter Brock down on the finish line now. And round he goes, the flat part of the circuit where the cars are accelerated up to fairly high speeds, Leo, and in fact your brother Ian Gagan wrapped a Falcon up fairly well down in that area of the Dunlop Bridge.
Yes, that Dunlop Bridge, he tried very hard to knock it over.
It was one of the bigger accidents. The last lap sign is being shown to Peter Brock in 0.5, 3.1 kilometres to go, about 1 minute 15, 1 minute 16 at current race pace, being hounded by Peter Williamson in 77, but that won't go on for very long.
And there's not a person in the grandstand that's sitting.
Look at the style of a champion. Because we really have seen him in 2 situations today where experience, guile, skill, and a little bit of sixth sense has really served him very, very well indeed. And one of those frustrating sportsmen who makes it look all so easy.
He even got time to have his arm out of the window right at the most difficult part of the course down through the S's.
He didn't last year, if you remember, when he found his way around Alan Moffat down there in a seemingly a foolhardy move, but a move which his great flair pulled off.
Even here, he can afford a wave. I'd want both hands on the wheel coming through that section.
Well, he's delighted, and he's earned it. 7 wins on a row, 8 altogether in the Sandown Enduro. The winner of the Hang 10 400 for 1981. 7 times in a row, Peter Brock for the Marlborough Holden dealer team in car 05.
2 hours, 30 minutes and 37.8 seconds was the race time. Wasn't long ago it took all of 3 hours. There the crew greets their driver. Can there be any question of this?
Paddy's heroes and